everyone. I'm Linda Nickell, and I'm delighted to welcome you to the 255th session of the Happiness Hour. If you'd like to stay in the loop and meet even more inspiring photographers, sign up for our newsletter at lindanickell.com/happiness hour. Tonight's guest is Jackie Schletter. Jackie. Jackie blends a lifelong love of nature with an artist's eye, creating award-winning photographs that capture the beauty and fragility of our natural world. Known for her evocative portrayals of birds and other wildlife, Jackie's images have earned recognition from the American Photographic Artists, the American Society of Media Photographers, and the International Photographic Awards, and that's just naming a few. Jackie continues to share her knowledge and passion for nature and photography through workshops and one-on-one mentoring. If you're on Instagram, look for her at lowcountry_nature, and you can find her workshop schedule and sign up for her newsletter through her website at jackieschletter.com, and I will link those in the show notes. In tonight's presentation, Creative Editing in Lightroom Classic, Breathing New Life into Your Images, you'll discover how to transform photos you might have overlooked into expressive, eye-catching pieces. Jackie, welcome to the Happiness Hour.
Thank you very much. Appreciate having me.
Yes.
So I am going to kind of basically run through my presentation. If there are questions, I don't know if it's best if you like them asked along the way or save them till the end, but I'm happy to answer, anything anybody wants to know.
All right. Before you get started,
Oh.
what did I miss in your bio? Is there something that you need to like pepper in there that I kind of skimmed over? Because I stalked you. That's how I found you. But if there's something that I missed that you want to share, please take a minute to just.
Yeah, there's not a lot else to tell, honestly. I have done photography. It has been a lifelong passion, and I started when I was a high schooler. I'm from the Chicago area originally. You'll probably hear it. But I loved photography from the get-go, and I was very lucky to have a very advanced program through high school. And by the time I got to college, I was well ahead of the game, and learned a lot in college. And I really thought this would be my career, a photojournalism type career, but as all of our dreams often don't pan out, that didn't happen, and I ended up in business ownership. And over 30 years, I had a couple different careers. The last 20 were spent in veterinary medicine. And then in 2021, my husband and I decided to make a move from Southwest Florida to South Carolina. I live just outside of Savannah, closer to Hilton Head. And I told him, I said, I've had enough of vet med. I need a break. I'd really love to go back to something that I have so much passion for. And God bless him, he said, have at it. And so the last 4 years, I've really been, this has sort of been a deep dive back into photography for me. And
Well,
very different, by the way. This is, I grew up in, I was in the age of dark rooms and film. I processed my own film and my images and with all those stinky chemicals. So coming back into photography in this digital age has been unbelievably fantastic.
it's a lot of fun, isn't it?
It is.
And
Yeah.
then with the software that we can play with, it just takes it to another level, which
Oh,
which is why
no
you're
doubt.
here. Because when I look at your wildlife photography, I'm going to be very specific and say your bird photography and compare it next to mine. I'm like, oh my God, it's night and day. So, you fall into the category of people that are doing the work that I would like to do. And so thank you, thank you, thank you for accepting my invitation to join us. And this is going to be a treat. So
So thank you everyone again for coming. And I'm going to run through some of I guess most of my journey in terms of how I found this type of photography. So I get a lot of questions about equipment. I'm not a technical shooter. I'm always very upfront about that. I kind of learn just as much as I need to do what I want. And so my journey is always ongoing that way. I'm like, well, I'd like to try this. And so now I have to learn about it. So I do shoot with two kits. I'm a Canon user. I have two R5s, so I am mirrorless. I think most of us are these days. And primarily, you'll see me out with each kit. One of them has the 100-500. I love a good zoom lens. And then I have a 400 millimeter prime that is a 2.8 aperture, so nice and fast. Some of the other things that I think I wish everyone had with them, I've got a couple landscape lenses. If you have any doubt about using an extender, like I have a 1.4 extender, as far as I can speak to Canon, the image degradation is nothing. It has been absolutely fantastic. So I'm a big proponent of getting that extra reach with the extender. And then I've always got binoculars. And then a couple of things here that I'll touch on is a little camping stool and a monopod. And I'll get into that in a little bit. But these things for stability really changed my world in terms of the quality of photographs. So one of the things I've noticed, photography, since I've jumped back in all these years, these types of images are common now. Beautiful bokeh, we're sort of isolating subjects when we can. And it sort of reminds me, I'm old enough to remember the glamour shots in high school where you just sit with these backgrounds and there's these beautiful portraits. And I feel like photography went there in a really beautiful way, but also in a somewhat predictable way. And it can be hard to experiment and get out of this sort of bocalicious realm that we all love. And I love it too. But a lot of us are taught and trained, and I certainly was formally, that we're really after a technically perfect shot. And I still hear that now, where folks are endeavoring so hard to get it all right in the camera so that you don't have to do anything in post-processing. And if that kind of photography floats your boat, rock on, because that is a really special skill, getting these images great right out of the camera. And I endeavor to do that as well, but it is somewhat limiting. And so this is again where I just thought to myself, gosh, there must be more. We've got these Lightroom, Photoshop, so many different ways that we can be creative. So the really cool thing is I've noticed, I don't do a lot in Facebook, but on Instagram, I have noticed so many people stepping into a creative vibe, and I absolutely love it. And that's what really lights my fire in terms of photography, is going out now and thinking, gosh, in the field, trying to figure out what I can do in post-processing. So it's something of a hybrid in that I am using the camera with great intent often to meet an end game that I want to see in Lightroom. So it's not necessarily that I'm just taking an image and then doing whatever I want with it in Lightroom. There's definitely some planning, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So breaking this kind of convention that every photograph doesn't have to be perfect. So some of the things that I have sort of latched onto and love is that I think ISO in our digital age can be exploited, and I'll show you in a couple of examples for that. Shooting in all types of light. There's a gal I know who says that nothing good happens after 10 a.m. for photographers. And I just couldn't disagree more. There's so much that happens between the golden hours and the blue hours. And we can definitely exploit light and daytime, what happens during the day. Not all critters are out at dawn and dusk. So it's important to learn how to shoot, I think, at all hours of the day. And honestly, I say the light is only bad if it doesn't serve your purpose. So if it's not meeting your artistic or your technical purpose, then it's not the right light for you. I overexpose and underexpose with intention. I'll show you a couple examples of that. Using atmospheric distortion, everyone hates heat haze, but you can use it to your advantage. And then finally, yes, you can handhold your camera, but should you? There's so many great ways to stabilize and help yourself along in terms of making really sharp, crisp shots. So no matter your goals, I think that your foundation, like anything, if you play sports, you've always got a good foundation to get better at it. And I think the same thing applies to photography. So while we'll talk about some of the artistic side of photography, we're also going to talk real quickly about some of key elements that I think are really important. And if you need these things to excel also in the creative side. So I love that our cameras work. You can shoot on full auto and take beautiful pictures, but I do think it's important to understand how to shoot manually and to change aperture, shutter speed, and ISO to your advantage. I think you need to practice. Everyone should be out in their yard using their cameras as often as they can. Muscle memory is huge. Again, back to the sports analogy. You really need to be able to change settings and feel through your buttons and dials without thinking about it. Your hands need to be able to do that automatically. If you're not using a back button focus, I definitely recommend it. Makes a really big difference. I use all three back button focuses on my Canon, and there are about 1 million videos that show you how to set that up. But it takes away the focus from your shutter button and makes a big difference on locking in and how you use your camera. I think everyone should know the limits of their handheld shots. I can go down to about a 30th of a second. As I get older, I think that it's changing, and it's probably a 60th or 100th that I know it'll be really sharp. But that makes a difference if you're hand holding your camera, knowing how low you can go for a sharp shot, and then how much ISO you want to give up in exchange. So it's important to know what you can do. Again, that becomes less important if you just put yourself on some kind of steady system tripod. I'm a huge fan of a monopod. Fatigue, this is fatiguing. If you spend all day in workshops or just all day out, our long lenses get heavy. So I think there's also a good reason there to use a monopod. I shoot at eye level every chance I get, hence my little camping stool. It's light and portable and makes all the difference in lots of ways. I stopped worrying about ISO a long time ago. We just have too many ways to mitigate it in post-processing. Doesn't mean I go willy-nilly for ISO, but I also don't fret when it gets into the thousands. And I've got beautiful images at 10,000 and 20,000 ISO. When you're shooting at dawn and dusk, you often need to go there. And then finally, I think it's important that we understand a little bit about the histogram and what it's showing you. So if people aren't seeing it in their viewfinders, I always recommend that you have your histogram showing. And I've got a couple examples of that as well. So real quickly, we'll just go through some high key, low key, painterly, color splash, and adding artsy filters. That's kind of the different types of creative that I'm going to follow through with here. So here you can see this is just a pretty egret. Generally this wouldn't really be an impressive shot, right? But I look for elements that will make pretty art. This one had it. There's bokeh balls back here in the water. This bird has rim light, so all of that glow shooting into the sun a little bit. You can even see a little bit through the bill. There's a piece of feather. So look for elements. You might not have a really spectacular location, but maybe the bird or your subject has spectacular elements to it, and then you can exploit that. So here you can see I just color toned the backdrop. Now those bokeh balls are actually part of the story here. We brought those forward. So there's elements in this image that I liked and that I exploited. Now this is where I started. So when I first got started deciding that I needed to be more creative, here are a couple of images that terrify me, honestly, looking at them now, because I was just shooting for the bird. Cormorants have beautiful sapphire colored eyes. This pelican had gorgeous colors and a weathered beak, like it was like an old soul. So first of all, you can shoot just for the subject and make something artsy, but then also a lot of times this made me think, gosh, what other images are hiding in my Lightroom arsenal that I might be able to go back that I didn't do on purpose, but that maybe I can repurpose. So here is where those two images ended up. So these are dark backgrounds. This is when I first started experimenting. And you can see that beautiful eye. There's water beating off of the bird. So there were very specific elements to these images that I wanted to work with on the artsy side. And so we ended up kind of making a couple of portraits with these images. Now, I created just a few little shorts that can show you how I did this. So here, this is just, obviously grabbing the bird here. And then I'm going to mask and then just subtracted the subject from that background mask. And now literally just dropping that exposure. And most of what you see tonight is just going to be using this tiny upper section of Lightroom. We're really not even diving into all of its amazing capabilities. I'm showing the easy stuff, the really low-hanging fruit, and how impactful it can be. So all I'm doing here is dropping these sliders. Then I went in, I'm on a Mac, you can hit K, and I freestyle with a brush all on its own. And then you can see I'm pulling down the exposure sliders. And now I'm just going to start painting with that brush. And we're just going to let some of that black background fall away. So you don't want the sticker effect. I like to kind of fade out the edges. And I'm even going to go around the edge of the pelican here. So you're taking away the hard line, and the bird or whatever your subject is just going to sort of more fade into the background instead of be an element sitting on top of it. So I'm literally just slightly touching, and you can see this tool has a bit of a feather to it. And just running the edges. This makes all the difference. Then you can see there's just a tiny little part of the background that the mask didn't grab. So just taking care of that. And that's literally all there was to getting started. And then you can just mask the bird and move on. So it's a really simple process. Now, one of the other ways we can create our dark backdrops is organically. And this is completely out of camera. So we're making our work much easier, not even having to mask. And so here on the right is the original image. That's the raw image. And this was done by really exposing for the bird. So I decided what my shutter speed and aperture would be, and then I just kept lowering the ISO until literally through the viewfinder, you can see how dark your backdrop is getting. Once I was happy with that, click the shutter, and then here we are. So this is an organically dark backdrop with just really, I clarified the feathers a little bit, maybe just brightened the lures and the bill here, but this is breeding season, and this is what this bird looks like, as all of the birders here know. So here we've achieved something similar, but 100% did it in the camera and with intention. And then same for this image. Again, same thing, exposed for the bird, an organically dark backdrop. But this bird has a lot of detail that's sitting around it. So I had an idea of carving out something really artful for this particular piece. And so if you're not using the navigator, again, I don't know how advanced everyone is here, but it's amazing how many folks tell me they don't use Snapshot or Navigator. So in order to do a lot of my masking, I really have to get in tight. And so this navigator, as you can see up here, will give you the opportunity to zoom in. And here's the final image. So this is what I ended up doing. Again, I just hit K and grabbed a freehand brush and then just literally brushed out all of that black and ended up carving in. I decided I thought, well, maybe it'd be neat to have it be like an ocean wave, like it was surfing on an ocean wave. And it didn't happen overnight. It took a long time to come to this. But that is the goal that I set for this image. And then I just worked it with the brush. And then here's another little short to show using this navigator tool. So here you can see I'm down at 200%, and now we can move this box all over the image and get in really tight on some of these edits. So again, I'm just picking up a brush, pulling down these sliders so we get to the dark, like the backdrop. And now I'm just going to go in all these tiny nooks and crannies. And this can be a real labor of love, let me tell you. But depending on your image, the time that you spend doing these really fine details is 100% all the difference in how your image is going to look at the end of the day. So you can see just all this greenery here can be so easily removed, but you need to have it kind of in your face so that you can work easily and get some of those pieces out. So I think the navigator tool is really important. And then the snapshot tool, I've found a lot of folks are duplicating their images to make new versions. But what I do is I create a new version and then I go over here and I hit this plus button and I make a snapshot. And so all I do then is label it. It'll come up with a little box and I call it whatever I want. A lot of times for a gallery or an exhibition or a competition. And then I know exactly what I did with that version and I can go back to it very easily, especially when raw files are requested. And I want to make sure I'm sending the exact right image. So Snapshot is a really super easy way to save versions of images as you work through them. I'll also use it. I might get started on an image and it'll take me weeks or months to kind of figure out where to go with it. And so I'll slowly save my progress also using snapshots. So I know where I was and it'll help me to know where to go. Another way for dark backdrops that's super easy is just an old school, simple underexposure. And that's all this image was. Super dark at dawn. So I just underexposed, but enough so that we could see the bird. And then here, all we had to do was bring the exposure back up and then bring in a little bit of gold to show that sun that was coming up. But all of this darkness is mostly organic. So again, I didn't have to play a whole lot in Lightroom. So I do think it's important that you have a plan. I watch a lot of folks, particularly during butterfly and insect season, run around the butterfly garden chasing things down, or even patience levels can be tested when you're waiting for birds to appear. So people start to move, they think, oh gosh, there's nothing happening. So I need to go to a new spot. But I'm a really big proponent of finding a place to be and staying the course. Chances are something great is going to happen while you're sitting there. And Murphy's Law, something great is going to happen the minute you leave as well. So I typically don't chase things around. So this bird is a really great example of finding, first of all, I know that blackbirds live on canna lilies. They spend a lot of time in these patches. These canna lilies are beautiful. So I will scout it out, see where the birds are hanging. I'll find the little patch of canna lily that they're going back and forth to, and then I'll set up the exact blooms that I want with the exact background that I want. And then I'll sit on my little camping stool and wait it out. And chances are, because I've already scouted what they've been doing, they're going to show up. And then I've almost set up a studio in the wild. They are going to be exactly where I want them. So once you get up and start moving, you're changing so many elements, right? You're changing the background, the flowers, the lighting. If you just wait it out and have a bit of a plan, chances are you're going to end up with a higher quality image that was thought through. Now, some of the time you'll find images that work well high key and low key. I don't find this often, but I use this example because I want to encourage you to try both sides, slide those sliders all over the place. See the extremes so that your brain starts to register what is happening as you're using those sliders. This one just happened to work out great in high key and really great in low key. The lighting had something to do with that. So now moving into more of the high key realm, we're going to do a lot of similar things that we did with the dark backgrounds opposite. So now we're going to look at overexposing images that will make your entry into Lightroom processing easier. And same thing though, we're going to use the sliders just in that upper tone section. I'm not going to do anything crazy or complicated. So here on the left is the original image of these marbled godwits at the beach. Here is the histogram. So a couple things here. So this shows you, first of all, the histogram is way to the right, which typically when I'm shooting low, if I'm shooting for low key, I try to keep the histogram on this left side. If I'm shooting for high key, I'm going to try to keep it on the right, kind of the right third and the left third. So here I was in a good place where I wanted to be for bringing into Lightroom. Now, one thing that y'all will notice within some pictures we have coming up, you will blow out the whites. And I'm here to tell you it's okay. It really is okay. There isn't anyone who has purchased one of my images that said, oh my gosh, I can't have that in my living room. The whites are blown. It's not a thing. So when it comes to artful renditions of our photographs, we have so much more leeway and can actually use some of the things that we consider massive flaws in standard, technically perfect images to our advantage. So with this image, I was just able to do some simple masking, bring that background to white. And then I want to focus tonight too on making sure that you have a mix of textures. This really lends some nice depth to images. So here I really overly texturized the backside on, sliding that texturizing slider left. And then here I almost over texturized to make sure that this bird was as sort of sharp as it could be. And then even down in the water, so I made all of the outside of it soft, but the part where the reflection is here, I over clarified, and also dehazing is super for water. And it really, I always say dehazing makes water more watery. And that's what I did here. And so there's a whole mix of things going on in this image. So similar here, a histogram way to the right, super overexposed, just shot for the bird. And then same thing, just I'm gonna show you this one too. Cut out the bird here, and then we're gonna go to town with a little bit of cropping and masking. Now this one, you don't always have to have all white backdrops. I left a little bit of environment so you could see that this bird was standing in the water. And then here's a quick short for this one. Now this one, I'm going to grab this bird with the object tool. I think a lot of times you get a cleaner catch. Look how nice that is. And then I'm going to invert. So this is how I'm going to work with the background. So I have a super crisp backdrop, and look at that. Just slid it to the right. Done. Super easy. And then you can mask in the water part, but for this purpose, I wanted to show. Now I'm just going to grab the object tool for the bird. Now these whites here, you can see the cap feathers. Some of those are kind of missing. You could go back in and mask those in. For time constraint, I didn't get too crazy, but this is where I suggest moving your sliders all over the place, and you will see such a different look start to emerge from an image like this. And I'll come down. Now this is 1600 ISO, and I went ahead and just sharpened and put some luminance there, just use the manual. So a lot of times I don't even denoise it for artful purposes. You don't always have to. And then just working with saturation. You can see how it's changing. And this is what I want you to, think about as you're trying to get artful with your images, is seeing all the possibilities. And I'm only playing with a couple of little things here. Your blacks, your whites, your contrast, all of it will make such a difference when you're playing with these images. Lots of fun. Couple more examples here. This is a couple, this is a linear masking that made this background. So again, intentional overexposure, but sharp. So we have a nice eye and bill. Now, some of these, by the way, they're uploaded into this presentation, not super high res. So if they don't look tack sharp, that's why. Now this one was done, and I'm going to show this to you too, with just a linear gradient, actually a couple of linear gradients to add in this blue background of the ocean and almost a little bit of Belt of Venus here. And then this image, same thing, overexposed. And then we just kind of brought back all the color and sharpness. And then here again, just masking in some of the water just gives us some context as to where we saw this bird. This was at a low tide here in the low country. And then images like this look amazing on mediums like canvas and like a high quality cotton rag, like a paper that's really texturized. When I do these like that, I'm usually asked, is that a watercolor or a painting or a pastel? So the medium that you go to with some of the images makes a big difference too, but those render really beautifully on that type of edit renders beautifully on paper. So there's a lot of tone in the middle too. I don't want you to think it has to be, white or black. You can, even with the black image here, I added back in color and clarity to show this great blue heron fishing at low tide. And then here, this kind of started out on the white side, but then I toned in color. And again, it's just using a mask. And then I'm only using like the tint and to change colors. So I'm not even going into the color bars or wheels to do this. I do sometimes, but I want to show you things that were done easily that you didn't have to get really, really detailed with. Now I'm going to show you a little short here of a linear gradient. So here's an original image, this beautiful saddlebags dragonfly. And so this is the raw. And then here on the right, you can see I changed the tone color, just masking. And then I brought in another mask on the top to add additional color. So just to take all that white away that was just natural, part of the image. And this is a really easy way to take care of your backdrops. So here, just dragged in a linear gradient. And now I'm just going to start playing with color. And as you can see, I'm only using the temperature, the tint, and the hue slider. And then I'm just kind of looking at all of my options, slide them and see what colors. There's some saturation I'm bringing in. So I kind of left it blue, and now I'm bringing in a second mask. So same thing, just going to grab another linear gradient. And this one I'm going to kind of drag in from the top. So the cool thing about doing this as well, so now I can bring in a second color with this linear gradient. And again, I'm just going to kind of let the color sliders dictate as I look, just kind of do it on the fly. But the neat thing is that where these masks intersect, and you can do this with as many masks as you want, but they're going to make a third color for you as they blend together. So here you can see there's some blue, there's another tone of blue, and then we've created also something of a bit of a little vanilla part of the sky there as well. So again, very, very easily done.
Jackie, real quick question.
Yeah.
I noticed it's a 500 millimeter lens. Somebody just the question was this taken with a macro, but I'm guessing that it was the 500, correct?
These are a combination of the zoom and the 400 millimeter.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So the prime and the zoom.
Thanks.
Yeah. So one thing I'll hear oftentimes that there is an advantage to having the 400 millimeter prime. There is no doubt. Being able to shoot at a 2.8 aperture morning and night is a huge advantage for light, and the bokeh it creates is off the rails. There's no doubt. But so one of the reasons the images that I have here, that I use the images that you're seeing tonight, is many of them were taken with my 100-500 before I had my prime lens. And so the effects that you're seeing are from Lightroom for the most part. So when we look at some of these backdrops, they weren't just created because of the advantage that type of lens can bring. So I hope that clarifies a little bit. So another kind of neat look is just a light and airy look. If anybody knows Kelly Lukey, she is the light and airy queen. Her work is just spectacularly beautiful, and she lives in this beautiful, dreamy realm. And I know that's a combination of her own cocktail of magic. But we can also work images with that sort of feel in terms of adding. So again, we've got some highly texturized portions of the image and then some under texturized, right? So we've made this very soft and smooth and dreamy. And then, so it's not just the back, it's not just your subject and the backdrop, but I think it's important to add those elements to your subject as well. So I went through here again, just grabbed a brush, handheld, and I'll just go in here and make, for instance, the feathers highly texturized. And then here, I soften this. And again, texturized here where the bird's head had been in the water. But then I might soften again around the edges like we did with the pelican, so that you're creating some depth, not just in the background and with your subject, but in the subject itself. And that's really easy to do. Now, one of the other things I like to do that helps you really work your creative juices, and when you had absolutely nothing to start with. So this was an early morning dawn that I was hoping would come to fruition, and it didn't. So, but the sun was trying so hard to pop through the clouds. This is a natural fog bank. But there were some elements of this image, kind of like the first image I showed you. There were some elements that I loved. It was calm. The feeling of solitude was fantastic. Flock of gulls circling. The sun was trying to come through. There's that layer of fog. And so what I'll say is, there wasn't really anything. A monochrome version probably could have given this some credence, but otherwise, this really wasn't a great morning to shoot in terms of art. So then I say, create what you wish you would have seen. And so this is just a product of really some radial gradient masking here. So I'll draw sort of a long oval with the radial gradient. And then the rest is just bringing in those masks. And so remember, I said your multiple masks will start to blend color for you. And you'll have to think about it less. You can just move your masking around. And again, this image took a long time for me to get to a happy place for me. And then I even put in a radial gradient down below because clearly we would see a reflection had it been there, had the sunrise done what I hoped it would. So this is just a complete figment of my imagination, yet an absolute real scene taken with the camera. And so that's one of the things I absolutely love about photography is we're showing something 100% real that existed, but then the mood of it only existed in my head or your head, and you're going to find a way to show that to your viewer. So here is a great example of heat haze. This is out at one of the beaches in Hilton Head. It was hot, 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 as one of those days where you could see it, coming off the sand, the heat. So this is about 50 yards out. So we're already probably not going to get a super sharp shot. But I took these images because I loved the variety. There's like 7 or 8 different birds sitting out on this sandbar. And when I got back in to look at the images and I opened them up in Lightroom and I thought, wow, look what the heat haze did. So this was a happy accident for me. I didn't really realize what a painterly feel the heat haze would automatically give me. So in Lightroom, all I really had to do with this one was color tone it. So I definitely made the tones more vibrant, and again, just bringing in a linear mask and then playing with saturation. And then here, I would go in and maybe just make some of the sand more clear, clarify the sand, and added some color tone. But this is where you start to add these situations into your database. And so now when I'm out shooting in the hot, like we are now in South Carolina, I'll keep in mind that if there's heat haze, can it be used to artistic effect? Now, other artful processes, cropping into images is something I love to do. You might have a big old scene, like I was up in near Shims Creek in South Carolina here where shrimp boats sit. And I just didn't really, well, wasn't feeling it, but I loved all the details on the shrimp boat. So I just started, focusing on, look at the chains and the rust and the paint, the chipping paint and the wood, and so many different things that you can focus in on and make an interesting image. And then same thing here in old church ruins that I just focused on one element of it. So just cutting into a whole scene sort of gives its own artful effect. So bloom here again, lots of busyness with the branches, but the bokeh was so pretty. I thought, gosh, you can't let that go to waste. So I just cropped in and then smoothed out all that bokeh. And this is easily done. You can mask it, or you can just take your handheld mask and just decide, where you want. Like this might have been pretty if these were crisp, more texturized. There's so many different ways you can play this. It just depends on, what suits your eye. Color splashes are a really fun, artful way to play. This is in Bruges in Belgium, and it was wet, rainy night. And so I did a little street photography, which is not my jam. So I don't really know what I'm doing with street photography, but I liked that it was wet, and I decided to render it in black and white. And then, and you'll use your experience. I've been there a few times, and I thought, gosh, this is such an old town, but here we are in 2025, 24, enjoying it. And so I decided just to light up the one end of the street, kind of like we were walking from an old to a modern era. And so even something, the feeling that you have when you are someplace or shooting a particular subject can influence the creativity that you bring to the image. And this is a very traditional color splash, right? One particular element. Usually when you see them, it's like this. So this one, I just chose the red bridge to focus on. And this type of thing can be a labor of love. So this was multiple object masking. It's a busy background. So this was a little more difficult, but I thought well worth the effort in the end to try to get as much of the bridge rendered in that red as I could. And then, of course, monochrome is its own artful endeavor. Again, here, clarified on eyes and nose and little snoot here, and then the rest of it just sort of fades into the background. So a dichotomy of what's in focus and what isn't creates an artsy effect. And then I can't tell you enough, contrast, clarity, sharpening, really play with those things, especially for those of you that shoot birds. Architecture also renders really well like this. And again, these types of images printed to paper, this one almost ends up looking like a pen and ink drawing. Really neat effect. So I also think through not just to the image on the screen, but also what I might be printing it to when I'm thinking about the creative parts of what I might do. Silhouettes are also beautiful. I have such a goal to go to Africa so I can have elephant silhouettes and giraffe silhouettes, and I think it's a beautiful art form for photography, and I really love silhouettes on water. So this is my backyard. I have lots of water around me, so I'm able to take advantage of that. But there's just so many color tones in the water and textures. So I think silhouettes are also a really pretty way to create art. And this is again another black and white, but this is kind of just the opposite. I smoothed everything out and almost looks icy. So that's another rendering, but a little more silhouette-y. I really didn't look for details here, just the cutouts. Now you can also use these, so those people that are working on cell phones, I just include a little bit. So here's um, a more realistically rendered with tight clarity, and then one that I completely smoothed out. And again, this is one that on paper or canvas will end up looking really painterly. And as a matter of fact, if you paint, I know a couple of gals in my area that do amazing work. So they'll do a photograph and print it to canvas, so something of this nature. And then they also have a talent for painting, and they will go through and add portions of it with oil or acrylic on top. And it's a really beautiful look. So I have zero talent with a paintbrush, so I've not gone there, but it's a really neat mixed media. And then another thing about getting creative with your images, you don't have to worry about details and things like landscapes. Like if you look back here, this tree line, there's no detail there whatsoever. Like I feel like I could never enter this into any kind of competitive realm, but it's been a really popular piece just because the feeling that it gives. It's not about the details, it's the feel. So again, I softened everything back here, but then what we could see right in front of us here, the marsh grass and then the clouds, this is exactly what it was like. This is twilight here where I live. Beautiful colors, flat water, the reflection of the clouds. You can really just smooth out a piece like this and it looks really beautiful. And I think there's a neat thing in photography. I think we may over clarify what's close because that's how it would look to our eyes, and then fuzzy up what's in the back. We're not going to have sharp vision all the way down the field, right? So I think this ends up looking a little more like we were standing there. And then ISO, so this is a 2500 ISO. So this is a great example of doing nothing with the ISO and just letting it be. This really gives this marsh grass a texturized feel, almost like it was a little breezy that morning, almost like you can feel it moving. And then there's also, you can add grain as well. If you look down, at the very bottom of all the sliders, you can add grain and it will also give a neat texturized look. But I just left this image. I didn't denoise it. This is an older image and no denoising, and just let that ISO do its work. And then there's lots of different programs out there now, plugins that we can put onto Lightroom. And so I've started using On1 a couple of years ago, and I've just stuck with it. There's lots of good ones. So this is an example of, here's the original image in Rockport. And I went ahead and you can see the water went all the way around, but I cropped in and smoothed out the water, did a little bit of generative fill there because we can for art, right? We're not submitting it to a flat out photography competition. And then clarified and brought up the color, the vibrancy. You can see these lobster traps now. Just added a little bit of color to the sky and tone. You can do that with your linear. And then I brought it into On1 and added the rain. So I like to add, the only things I really use On1 for is if I would want to add sun, like a sunburst or bokeh. And then weather is kind of neat. That will add some ambiance or drama to your images. And then they even have some neat vignettes. Like you can see, this is, I was in Vermont in the fall. And so this vignette sort of does like a burst on the edges. And I liked that because, the wheel, you have movement with the wheel and then the waterfall. And I thought, oh, kind of gives like that fall burst. So you can find lots of different uses for some of these filters that sort of marry with what you want your image to put out there as a vibe. And this is a very subtle, here's your raw image of the snowy egret. And so this is just, I desaturated the backdrop here, but I made sure that some of the elements that make a snowy stayed true. So we've got the yellow lures here, and then those golden slippers that tell us it's a snowy. And then, so I left all of this almost in a monochrome and then brought this into on one for just a little bit of a sun flare. And it's subtle, but kind of makes a nice difference. And again, sunburst series is by far my favorite thing. I'd sunburst lots of things if I had the time to do it. So again, take your photographs. This is exactly what I saw, but this type of thing would be really hard to recreate in the field. So for art purposes, add some of these neat drama, bokeh and sun flares. There's a little frog from Costa Rica, and then little zebra longwing. Now, I will say the only trick that you have to think about when you're using some of these filters is I do pay attention to where the light source was. So I didn't think about putting the originals in here, but the raw, the light, there's actually like not rays, but there's a definite light source coming here. Like this lighting on the butterfly is not created. It was like that. So in this particular case, the sun flare is a really perfect addition to what was naturally there, and then you're just enhancing it and adding drama. And same thing with the frog, identify where the light source was coming from. You can see his little face and the flower. I mean, you can see where the light was, and then go ahead and follow up with that with your filters. So finally, I think printing your work, it's important that you match your image and the way you processed it to the right end game, if that's what you're going to do. I know not everyone wants to print their work, and that's fine. But if you do, then there's some like canvas and the highly textured papers will definitely give you that painterly look. A lot of my images now I print to acrylic and metal. That those types of images, the metal just pops color and they're sharp and there's no frame. So I've noticed a lot of people really like just being able to hang something on the wall that's not going to fight with anything else in the room, and you're not agonizing over what kind of frame should be around it. And then some other different mediums. And then I think a lot of people don't think about, I make holiday cards and note cards, thank you cards, sympathy cards. You can make so many different things with your images just with the program, just like going through Vistaprint. The quality is actually really good. And then home decor. So I print coasters and mouse pads and all kinds of fun things that you can do, pillows, little throw pillows with your images on them. So it's kind of endless where you can put your images today, and there's about 10,000 different places that do it. And it's just a matter of finding ones that are consistent with quality. And I'm always happy to give recommendations for that. I use 4 or 5 different art houses for my work now. So that's it. That's just kind of an intro into some of the basic concepts that I use. And then shameless plug for workshops coming. They are on my website if you like to do that kind of thing. And finally, I always say to, anybody that I have the pleasure of working with is embrace your creativity, but work to find your own style. We can get ideas from other people, but really playing and experimenting, you will find something that is completely you and sort of ultimately create your own brand. So enjoy and have fun. And thank you for listening.
Oh my goodness.
Was that too much?
No, it's not enough. And now, okay, first of all, take your screen down. Look at you. You're okay. So can I tell everybody? Can I?
What do you want to tell them?
This was your first Zoom presentation.
It is.
Yes. And it was funny because we came in early to load and unload and we had all kinds of technical issues and it's just like magic. You're a pro now. Um Jackie, yeah, you're like, is this too much? And I'm like, no, it's not enough. And now you're forcing me to put you on the spot. Would you please come back another time? Would you please consider it?
I would. It's really hard when you're doing presentations because you're not sure everyone's level of expertise, what they know, what they don't. And there's so many deep dives you can take into this. And on my YouTube channel, there are very detailed, like there's 15, 20 minute if you want to sit through it, but it much more step by step where I could take the time to show.
And that, and
We can't do that for in this.
you can't, and that's okay because like I had said to you, this is an introduction
Yes.
to the people in the room. Maybe Mr. Google sends it out to somebody that's just getting started or somebody that's kind of stuck in a rut. We don't know what Mr. Google does. It's another resource for
Sure.
people wanting to learn more and do more and maybe sometimes we just need to get a little spark of inspiration and you checked all my boxes and I am so excited that I was able to get you to do this. Well, I didn't have to work that hard, but it was just
You
like,
didn't. I
just
was easy.
I know you're easy and I need everybody to be just as easy because this is
And
it's
you can reach out anytime. I think it's important for us to share what we know. And so I have people I was like, send me the image and I'll say, hey, try this, try that. I'm not going to work it up for you, but um I can give ideas or feedback and I love that.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of this community is we're here to share, we're here to learn,
Yeah.
and I'm going to say um, I had it wasn't that long ago Valerie Hoffman, who's in this room, I had her come and do some things. What can you do with Lightroom to kind of tweak your image, and she was showing us with tools and things, and I loved seeing her pepper the chat with comments of like, I haven't tried that. So even somebody that is she's a professional working photographer. That's her full-time
Mhm.
job, kind of like you. And she's still learning too. And that
We
is
all are.
hard. Every time
Yeah.
I get on here, I'm learning something different and
Yep.
getting to meet new people. And so I, you are the highlight of my day. Absolutely the highlight. So thank you so much. Okay, so I've got a couple of questions in here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Paul says, I have on one, but find it very hard to learn. Is there any way to replicate on one effects in Photoshop or Lightroom, if you know?
My guess is Photoshop probably. Now Lightroom has presets, but I'm really not a preset user and none of them really come close to these filters. So just I agree. I think on one, when you bring it in with your plugin and now your image is sitting there, at first I was like, oh my God. And so all I did was go to the top and there's filters and there's another something up top there. And all I do is click on that and then bring in the filter. So basically, I try to get my image done in Lightroom. I don't do anything else in On One other than add the special effect. So I don't know if that helps. So I'm doing everything I want in Lightroom, bring it into On One. I'll add like the rain in Rockport or the sun flare. And then at the bottom, I just click it out and it sends it right back into Lightroom for me. So when I say I'm using the basic functions, I'm using the basic functions. But again, I'm not a Photoshop user. But I can imagine there's super, super cool things that you could do there.
I am flying through this. So many comments, and I love the chat. That's one of my favorite things is to have the chat. So Paul
I
says,
can't see it. I'm sure I should be
yeah,
able to.
Well, it's okay. I will make sure you get it. I promise you, you'll get it. Um, so many really nice comments and encouraging themselves. Like, here's the last one. Susan just said, I love the license you've given us to play with bad light, bad images, and all the rest. So, I mean,
Yes.
those are, what's the word I'm looking for? It gives us permission just to play.
Yes.
And that's,
There's no rules.
it's
There's no rules. There's no photography police.
right. Well, I don't know about that. Harsh, pretty harsh. Okay, so you mentioned our friend Kelly Lukey.
Yes.
So do you know her in person? Have you met her?
Yes.
Okay, she is lovely, and I'm sure she would say the same about you. So I had Kelly on. So I'm gonna just for the people in the room, she was session number 226, and
Okay.
if you sign up for the newsletter, you'll know exactly when she's coming. But just between you guys, she's coming back in December. So
Awesome.
yes. So for those of you that are wanting more and more and more, um, you can tune in for that. And then I will somehow manage to get Jackie back in her.
I'd be happy
She
to.
didn't
We
say
can
no.
dial in on something.
Okay, yeah, we will. All right, Jackie, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to meet you, and
Thank you. Thanks. This was
thank you,
fun.
thank you for contributing to the Happiness Hour project. Y'all, number 255. So, Jackie, thank you so much.
Thank you, Linda.
All right, next week, I've invited Tony Baldessaro to return to share his presentation. This is an extended version of a TED Talk he just did. So, the power of photographing natural moment from within. So, until next time, go out and create something beautiful, and I hope that we see you again soon.